It is often stated that modern banking has its roots in the medieval Roman Empire, in particular in Florence and particularly through the Medici family. However, some aspect of banking existed in Rome as far back as the times of the kings. This form of banking influenced in a significant way the evolution of the republic that emerged after the expulsion of the kings. In this video, I look at the banking in ancient Rome and how it shaped the republic as recorded by the ancient Roman historian Livy. I welcome you to my YouTube channel where I explore ancient texts. The ancient texts I explore in this channel are those that have been around for thousands of years. At the moment, I'm going through From the Founding of the City by Titus Livius or Livy. This is a collection of books written about 2000 years ago, and it covers the history of Rome from its founding by Romulus in the 750s BCE to the time when Augustus was emperor, which was close to 0 AD. If you have not subscribed, subscribe so that you do not miss any of the videos I publish. The first secession of the plebeians in Rome in 494 BCE was a turning point in the evolution of the republic, and it shaped its future momentously. In particular, it led to the creation of the office of the Tribune of the people, which protected the rights of the people and also checked the powers of the patricians and more specifically the consuls. What is often lost is that the secession itself was caused by the malpractices of the moneylenders in the city, who were mostly rich patrician families. Livy tells us that over time, many plebeians found themselves shackled in debt, mostly thanks to the high interest rates they had to pay. The actual trigger of the secession was the plight of one veteran soldier who appeared on the forum one day dressed in dirty and tattered clothes and showing scars he had received while working as an enslaved person because he could not pay his debts. He informed his fellow citizens that despite his outstanding service to the Republic as a centurion and many other military distinctions, a creditor had taken his land away from him. Still, it was not enough to repay everything he owed. He was as a result enslaved. Livy writes, the crowd had now almost grown to the dimensions of an assembly of the people. He was asked, whence came that gap? Whence that disfigurement? He stated that while serving in the Sabine War, he had not only lost the produce of his land through the depredation of the enemy, but his farm had been burned, all his property plundered, his cattle driven away, the war tax demanded when he was least able to pay it, and he had got into debt. This debt had firstly increased through usury and had stripped him first of his father's and grandfather's farm, then of his property, and at last, like a pestilence, had reached his person. It turned out that he was not alone in this predicament. Many others in the city were like him. More people joined him at the forum, and their collective complaint turned into a huge protest. Livy writes, on seeing and hearing all this, a great outcry arose. The excitement was not confined to the forum. It spread everywhere throughout the city. Men who were in bondage for debt and those who had been released rushed from all sides into the public streets and invoked the protection of the curates. Everyone was eager to join the malcontents. Numerous bodies ran, shouting through all the streets to the forum. The consuls and the senators had to calm the plebeians down. It was the wrong time to have the plebeians protesting and not ready to work with the patricians. That is because at the time the city faced a threat of invasion by the Volscians, a neighboring nation. Livy writes, a war with the Volscians was imminent, and the state was torn with internal dissensions. The patricians and the plebeians were bitterly hostile to one another, owing mainly to the desperate condition of the debtors. The consuls and the senators needed to have the plebeians to pick up arms and protect the city. Under intense pressure, they promised to enact changes in the law to reduce the amount of interest the plebeians had to pay for credit. They also promised to forgive much of the debt. But all these steps were to be taken after the defeat of the invaders. Believing the consuls, the plebeians ended their protest and enlisted. Livy writes, on the promulgation of this edict, those debtors who were present at once gave in their names for enrollment, and crowds of persons ran in all quarters of the city from the houses where they were confined, as their creditors had no longer the right to detain them, gathered together in the forum to take the military oath. This formed a considerable force, and none were more conspicuous for courage and activity in the Volscian War. Once the war was over, however, it quickly became apparent no step was being taken by the consuls as promised regarding the question of debt. The promises had been made without an intention to fulfill them. Livy writes, the Romans, who had within a few days fought so many successful wars, were expecting the fulfillment of the promises which the consuls had made on the authority of the Senate. One after another, those who had before pledged their persons as security were now handed over to their creditors, and others were compelled to give such security. Livy tells us that the consuls themselves were under pressure from the patricians not to take any step that could jeopardize their profits. After realizing they had been lied to, the plebeians decided to abandon the city and move to the Sacred Mount and camp there. This action made the patricians feel the city's exposure to both external enemies and the plebeians. They concluded it necessary to negotiate and send one Agrippa Menenius to meet the plebeians on their behalf. The creation of the office of the Tribune of the people was one of the outcomes of the negotiations that followed. The tribunes were tasked with protecting the plebeians from exploitation by the patricians. That was, however, not the final resolution of the issues of credit in the Republic. The issue came up often over the centuries that followed. Livy recalls that in 342 BCE, the plebeians complained about the high interest rate they were being charged. A law was passed to cap it at 8%. This did not appease the plebeians, and they continued to complain about the debt that they could not service. Livy writes, another measure by no means so welcome to the patricians was brought forward the following year, which fixed the rate of interest at 8 1/3%. The plebeians adopted it with much more eagerness. Livy tells us that despite the fixed interest rate, the plebeians did not get respite. They were still unable to pay the debts they were owed. Acknowledging the enormity of the issue, the consuls appointed a commission of 5 individuals to find a lasting solution to the problem. Livy writes, the new consuls took up the financial question, which was the one hindrance to unity. The state assumed the responsibility for the liquidation of the debts, and 5 commissioners were appointed, who were charged with the management of the money and were hence called the mensari, or bankers. Seated at tables in the forum, they dealt with the long-standing debts due to the slackness of the debtor more than to his want of means, either by advancing public money or proper security or by making a fair valuation of his property. In this way, the immense amount of debt was cleared off without any injustice or even complaint on either side. It is likely from the patrician families that issued credit in ancient Roman Republic, the likes of the Medici family emerged and went on to contribute significantly to shaping the banking system as we know it today. If you found this video interesting, take a moment to strike the like button. I also welcome your comment. See you in the next video.